Hello and welcome to another episode of People in Legal, where we bring stories and insights from people in the legal industry today. Today, we're going to be covering off some stories of the hunger of striving to be a partner before 30, the highs of private jets representing a billionaire, as well as surf lifesaving and massive great white sharks. My name is Andrew Hay, and I'm going to be the host for today. For today's episode, I'm joined by a Perth-based barrister who successfully represented clients in complex and high-profile litigation arbitration matters with over 10 years' experience as a barrister, and before that in private practice at Gatons, Jackson McDonald and Lavan, including being a partner at Under 30. He brings a really broad breadth of knowledge in insolvency, litigation, disputes, and today I'd really like to welcome James Scovell, who's a barrister with Francis Burt Chambers. Welcome, James.
Thank you very much, sir.
Awesome. All right. Well, look, let's jump into it. And something I've got to say straight off, just knowing that is not a pretend background. What an awesome view.
It's not too bad. One of the joys of living in Perth.
Ah, beautiful. So look, James, let's kick off and get into it a little bit. And we've got some really cool things to go through today. You know, I think we had a little bit of a chat earlier just on some of the key topics. And I know we're going to move through a bit. So, you know, we'll keep people bouncing around a little bit. But just to start off with, could you just maybe tell us a bit about yourself, your career and your journey so far?
Yeah, sure. I was born in the UK to what I'd pretty much call a naval family in Portsmouth. My parents were good enough to bring me out here thinking there would be more opportunities for me, put me through Christchurch and then UWA. And law seemed to be the most obvious of choices for me, only because numbers, nope, too hard. Words far easier than numbers. And from when I started in my articles year, it became pretty obvious to me that litigation and probably about halfway through that sort of insolvency bent on that was what I was interested in. And so pretty much from my restricted practice year onwards, it's been a real focus on the insolvency and not just from that perspective of insolvent trading claims and those sorts of things, but also looking more towards the white collar crime side of it. So where there's been, you know, very substantial breaches of the Corporations Act.
Yeah.
And tying in with that was that as part of my sort of white collar practice, I was the partner responsible for the defence of Andrew Forrest when the ASIC team went after him for allegations of not properly disclosing or falsely disclosing things to the market. And during that 6 years, we went from the federal court to the full federal court, and then up into the High Court. So that was a reasonably large, you know, sort of portion of my private practice career.
Yeah, and I mean, you've kind of gone from a bit of a journey as well, sort of, you know, private practice, then into being a barrister as well. How did you look to sort of transition into that as well? Was it, you know, did you go through and, you know, just at some stage go, right, this is what I want to be, or how did you make that distinction?
I think the thing that they don't tell you about partnership, which is probably the bit that's a bit unfair.
Here we go. This will be good.
It's I've joked with a number of my friends. Is like this. You know, we always say, well, this wasn't on the brochure. You know, when you hit partner, you tend to spend a lot more time doing things that were not your law degree. So unbeknownst to me, I probably should have got an HR degree, a marketing degree, you know, an accounting degree, you know, to do all those things that are required, you know. And at the end at Gatons, I was staff partner there, and we had 100 people, you know. So running, you know, almost an HR department, you know, having meetings with people that were doing just silly little things that you would never get anything done because there would always be someone at your office. And the other thing was that you get to a point where, particularly because that at Gaydens, we were on bank panels. So I was doing a lot of bank financier work. The rates that they put you on are so tight that it doesn't actually make sense for me to do the work. So I've got to handball it down.
Yeah.
And if I do the work, it wasn't actually that fulfilling. So almost it got to a point where I was like, I'm not actually a lawyer anymore. I do a tiny bit of it.
Yeah.
But the bit that I really enjoy about all that is actually the strategy.
Yep.
And with those sort of matters, you don't. There is no real strategy. The bank knows what it wants to do, and it's going to go through. Insolvency ones, yeah, it was a little bit, but again, I wanted that to be my whole thing, rather than it being, well, that's about 20% of my career because 40% is taken up by the bank stuff.
Yep.
And the balance is admin. And then look, anyone who says that legal partnership is hugs, cuddles, and kumbaya is no.
It's a finance game. It's a margin game. It's everything, right?
It's ruthless. It really is. It's like every day someone's, some partner, is trying to, get be doing some work that he shouldn't be doing, and all those sorts of things. And it's really unfortunate, that lip service is given to the idea of we don't silo, we don't do this, we don't do that. But it's exhausting. It's a ruthless place to work. It doesn't matter what name is on the door; they're all the same.
Yeah. No. Look, it's a good point.
And so, given the opportunity to go back to doing what I wanted to, which was the big strategy, and also I love chasing corporate bad guys. So doing one at the moment, I've liquidators funded by for the purposes of recovering. It's about several hundred million for the ATO, and we had 6 weeks of public examinations.
Yeah.
Those public examinations, I have so much fun. I really do. You get these Mr. Smooth walking. Yeah. Mr. Smooth walks in thinking he's the smartest man in the room, and you yep, you're the smartest man in the room, and then until you're not.
A big part of that, it is really on strategy though. In order to, again, like how do you kind of come up with that strategy that you're going to play? Do you research people? Are you that person that can walk into a room and get a feel of somebody, but by looking at them or talking to them, like how do you kind of move into that and pick what you're going to do?
I think part of it is you got to have a reasonably good EQ.
Yeah.
The IQ is all well and good, and you can be the smartest book person in the room, but if you've got to cross-examine someone, you're not necessarily going to be as good as someone who's got a lower IQ but a much higher EQ.
Yeah.
So you're going to read the person.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've heard of the guy called Chris Voss. So Chris Voss was an he was a negotiator for the FBI. He's written a book that you definitely should read. It's called Never Split the Difference. And Chris, he is absolutely amazing in terms of, he says, if you get into an argument with someone, you've already lost. And the most important skill that you can have is to listen. And lawyers are great at not doing that. So, are you comfortable with silence? And when I've got someone in a witness box and they're talking and they stop, I'll just pretend to be looking at papers.
You know what? I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So the number one thing I got told when going into it was M&A, and we were talking with lawyers both sides, the bigwigs both sides, and the number one thing I got told: shut up unless you're spoken to. Awkwardness is good. Do not speak just to fill the gap. Because it's exactly what you've just said of, again, be busy, pretend, give them time, and I'm assuming you're going to say that they will get awkward and then start talking.
Because I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not awkward. So they are the ones that, and usually what comes out the second time is almost verbal diarrhea, because they haven't given any thought to it and they're panicking to fill and the most bizarre thing is sometimes I've actually looked at my watch and you can count 5 seconds, right? Now, it doesn't sound like much, but to that person in the witness box.
But if you're in the firings, like, you know, you're literally there front and center, right? So all the eyes are on you.
Yeah, it feels like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so the thing with Chris Voss is, so he used to actually be a hostage negotiator for the FBI, and he's got a lot of principles that I've learned a hell of a lot from. But one of the things that surprisingly you wouldn't necessarily think he would say is that, you know, and it's the same principle with what I do. You've got to conduct yourself in a way that, whether it's you're examining someone or you're negotiating with someone, is that you think you're going to have to come back to them later. And what I mean by that is that you don't say something to try and close this deal, because you may well come up against them later. And if what you've told them isn't true, you're going to have no hope and credibility later.
Yeah.
So I always thought that the division between CIA and FBI was that the FBI was local at home. Apparently, it's actually that if there's an American citizen involved anywhere around the world, the FBI do it. So he was the one who got sent when Somali pirates kidnapped, you know, American citizen.
Yep.
And he said every time he was doing a negotiation, it was with one guy, but it was the same chief that was sitting behind. So if he said, "Oh, I'll let you go to, that bloke. If you walk out, it'll be fine," and he walks out and they all shoot him.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they got those people. He's still got to negotiate with the chief the next time around.
Yeah.
So the way I treat it is that you play the game. You can play hard but fair. Don't play the man. Play the ball.
Yep.
And you know, it does get draining 20-something years of being someone's attack dog, you know, which is essentially what we are. But, you know, there are fun bits of it, and those sort of thinking about the strategy. And coming back to your question is, well, now at the bar, I can sit uninterrupted and concentrate and have a level of immersion in something whereby all that comes, that it's so much clearer. Yeah. I never used to understand, you know, when I briefed, you know, Barrister, you know, what they did in their ivory tower, you know, but now I do. And even my mates that I work with, they're like, "How did you think of that?" And I said, "Well, it's because I don't have like 8 people knocking on my door every 5 minutes."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I can actually go through the documents.
But it's focus, right? Is the key.
It is, and it's uninterrupted focus, and that's why I call it. It's the best thing I can call it is immersion, right? It's you get into it. It's like when I'm preparing for trial, everything else goes out the window, and you are, you know, and all of a sudden, then things that weren't necessarily obvious before become obvious. But when you're a partner, you've got no hope of doing that. No way. You could be like the best lawyer in town. But when can you sign this check? Can you check this email? There's no way you can have a continuity of thought that is required to be able to do that thing. And most of the guys that brief me utilize me with a view to saying, "We'll be down in the trees.
Yep.
We're on you 40,000-foot helicopter view. Thanks."
Yep.
And you tell us what to do and where to go.
Yeah, completely. And so over your career, you've worked on, you know, lots of different matters, different stakeholders. What was that one that was probably the most taxing on you personally? So there's obviously, you know, a side of that from a career perspective, and you know, this looked great, But what was the one that, like, for you personally, was that one that was, hard, or, but that's not the word. Like, taxing is probably the way to frame it.
So a couple of years ago, I was acting for a lender. It was a family group of companies. The son had a plumbing business that he ran through the corporate entity. The son needed to refinance because one of the big four, wanted him out. He approached what I would call a bridging lender. Now, the reason I say that, and I've been careful in my words there, because they are
Don't
not
want to get you in trouble. It's fine.
No, and because it's a very specific business model, in the sense that it's there for 6 or 12 months,
yeah,
right, and you are told from day one that this is not a facility that is commercial to go beyond. So we will help you out from this point to this point, right? But if you don't get your refi,
and again, to be fair, it's usually a higher interest rate and things involved in that, because it's there for a shorter period of time.
Correct. And so that's why, and people think, oh, it's like, it's unconscionable, it's this, it's that. It's like, no, what it is that it is their business model to get in and get out, right? Mm-hmm. They charge big fees up front, right? And then the problem is that they've got a far, far higher risk than a bank does, or a top tier lender, because if that person doesn't get the refi, it's all going to go to.
It's on them.
It implodes, right? So, and they know they're going to get burnt to an extent. So it's not some sort of wonderfully mercenary, profit making thing. It's problematic. Anyway, sure enough, he couldn't get refi, but then each time they wanted to do a short 3-month rollover, the lender required more and more security from more family members.
Yeah.
And one of the last pieces of security to come in was the family home, which was owned by his mum. She was 80. When she gave it, she was probably mid-70s. So by the time we got to trial, she was 80. And
so obviously everything went belly up, and then
the lender, to their credit, basically said, "Oh, look, we should do a deal, because this is not going to get any better, and we'll let you actually salvage something out of it. If you keep going, you won't have anything left." Yeah. And they were belligerent about it. And so when the old lady was the last woman standing with the property, we had, I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 independent solicitor certificates where she'd signed acknowledging that she'd had the guarantee explained to her,
what it meant
in English, what the consequences were, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden the defence became, she doesn't speak English, doesn't understand English. So really what it was an allegation that each of those 3 lawyers, who were completely independent of the lender, had lied, on their certificate. So we had to have an interpreter at the trial, and this is why I was one thing that I took no joy in whatsoever, was basically my job was to get her to admit that she spoke and understood English, and basically destroy the poor little old lady in the witness box, with a view to then meaning that she lost the house and was out the street.
Yeah.
And, at one point during the cross-examination, I wasn't nasty or anything like that. At one point, she made a slip where she answered the question instead of going through the interpreter. Yeah. And just, I didn't sleep for a while beforehand. I didn't sleep for a while after. That's where you just go like, what am I doing this for?
Yeah.
There's
always tough cases as well. I mean, in any role, Doesn't even need to be this. It can be any sort of thing as well. But like how and maybe framing it slightly different. There's bits that people like about your role, and there's bits that people don't like. How do you move on from that sort of thing? And because it's tough, right?
In part, I haven't. It's that, you can't erase it. Yep. You can't you can't change it. You can't conveniently delete it from your brain. And whilst yes, I had a job to do, and I tried to do it with the most amount of dignity possible. That I wasn't shouting and screaming and doing all those sorts of things. It was
not like what you see on TV, right?
No. Yeah. But sometimes those things, and I'm not doing it in a dramatic sense, but they haunt you, full stop, because it's whenever I now get a matter where there's guarantee involved, I'm like, it's just a little nudge reminder of, they're claiming it's unconscionable.
Yeah.
And so
do you potentially turn some of those down now and just say, look, I don't want to do them, or do you?
No.
How do you deal with it?
Look, I still do them because I think that there is a risk that there are some people that may not do it with a level of dignity and whatnot. Yep. Right? So that person, regardless of what they may have got up to, done, blah, 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 and the thing is that it's almost tantamount saying, I'm not getting back on the horse. Do you run scared from it forever? It was unpleasant, right? And I'm not going to forget it. But it does mean that, maybe not all of them are going to be as bad as that. And they haven't been.
Yeah. That's good. Hopefully not again.
Yeah.
And again, maybe a slight on the same track, but a slight pivot on it, sort of thing as well. But like, what's sort of the most important? And you've had multiple different, I'll say, roles. Yes, in the same domain, or mostly in the same domain. But multiple different roles and things. Like, what's maybe either the most important or a couple of them, if you've got a couple. Like sort of lessons that you've learned in your career.
For me, one of the biggest things is like stress management.
Yep.
Right. And this is not always, I guess, popular, but I will go and train, 2:30, in the day or whatever. I usually train every day, whether it's jiu-jitsu, weights, whatever it is. But you've got to find something that enables you to drop your stress level, but more importantly, switch your brain off.
Your outlet. Yeah.
Now, it always used to be lift heavy things, but when my son turned 4, he was allowed to start jiu-jitsu, so we started it together.
Yep.
And I now do that 3 or 4 times a week. And whilst in a joking sense, it's something very cathartic about choking someone. It brings the stress level down markedly. The thing is that while you're there for that hour, you cannot look at your phone. You cannot think about work because someone's trying to choke you, someone's trying to rip your arm off.
Be here now, right? Is the overarching thing.
It's a thing of like that hour, right? When I come out, recharge, haven't thought about it. If I go to the gym and lift weights, I've got my phone with me. People will call me, all that sort of stuff, right? Go to jiu-jitsu, whatever it is. All of a sudden, there's no thinking about anything. And you're doing it at 2:30, and like people are like, oh, but what if? And I'm like, look, nothing's going to happen between 2:30 and 3:30. Like, let's be realistic.
Yep.
And the other thing is that people say, oh, but how do you find the time?
You make
the time. What I've said is like, I can't understand why it's so hard for people to wrap their head around the fact that I'm a better barrister, a better dad, a better everything when I've got a lower stress level.
Yep. I'm exactly the same, by the way.
And so these people are like, oh, how do you make time for it? And it's like, because it's the thing that should come first. It's not the other way around. It's not how much work is there.
Your quality of work at that higher level of being 90 to 100%, actually doing the work and being good at it versus 50% of more time. I completely agree with you. I do the same. Like I go swimming, and by the way, I don't really like swimming, but I do it because it's 40 minutes to an hour in the pool where I'm there with my own thoughts. I do weird maths. I don't know why, but I do, of where I'm at and the percentage of, again, it's just a thing of getting me out of my head. But it's exactly the same concept of forcing yourself out of your current situation. Good exercise as well, by the way, so it gets your heart going, and it's good for everything. It's a win-win on like up here and also like in here as well.
So most important lessons are finding something. That don't kid. I don't want to listen to anyone try and tell me that it's not a stressful profession. That's just a nonsense, right? You've got to do something to bring that stress level down. And in the evenings, for example, if I'm like brain's still going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, I've now found something that will shut my brain up. So instead of trying to watch TV, Lego.
Yep.
I'm halfway through building a massive Chewbacca.
Tell you what, it can be bloody expensive.
It's cheaper than therapy.
Well, that's true. That's true. Very true.
But because you've got to focus, right? You see, my brain goes into that pit and this bit, and I'm following and so it calms my brain down, right? Whereas if I was sitting watching the TV, part of my brain is still being going, right? So I think that particularly for the younger guys, it's trying to identify what it is that does that. Once or twice a year, I go fishing like 200-300 kilometers off the far north Queensland coast. Liveaboard, charter out there, no phone, no nothing. That's my thing, is going giant trevally fishing and now the hunting, because I've got no phone. And so, you've got to find something that works for you, whereby you get a total break. Yeah. And it's a brain break as much as
I like it though, because again, it's like I have these same discussions with my wife around the kids and things as well. Of, I've got a work phone, I've got a personal phone, and it was purely because I was cheap when I was previously, where I used to travel a lot and I didn't want to do international roaming myself. Yeah. But like just on that sort of sense though, it actually enables me to make sure I spend time with the kids, and the time is there, and then I can if I want to pick my work phone up and check some stuff, I do. But it's instead of it just being there constantly, it gives me that break. So I completely get it.
One of my good mates who also instructs me, he called me probably a month or so ago and said, "Can we go for a beer?" And I was like, "Sure," because he's just had a baby, and he said that myself and one of our other good mates, he said, "You're the only ones that I know that get the balance right with the kids," because when my little man
there would have been some learnings with that, I assume. It was
and I said to him, "Look, don't. I mean, he's turning 9 next month, So I said, don't be thinking that I got this right, off the bat." But he said, like, "No, I've called you, and you can see where the water is." But we literally just walk down there and go fishing when he gets home from school. And he called me once and I said, I'm with Crash. I'll call you back after he goes to bed at 8:00. And he was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, we both knew there was nothing that was going to happen. If he said, "This is screamingly urgent, we got an injunction," fine, we'll deal with it. But and then he called me and I said, and he goes, "Oh, did you catch anything?" So, "Oh, yeah, we got a little," But he said, like, "You are the only one that just says no, you can wait 2 hours because this is my time with,
But that's just expectation setting as well, to be honest.
Yeah, and so that was what I was trying to explain to him is that is a case of boundaries, mate.
Mm.
If you let someone, if you pick up the phone and you're willing to have the conversation, that's your problem, not theirs. They haven't, imposed on you. It's that you're not saying, no, thank you. So I said to him, that's also a thing for him because he's in partnership, getting good people around him that, at that senior associate level who can take the work. But, I just said to him, like, you've got to learn and get comfortable with the idea of saying no or wait, And to be honest, I'd rather be doing that than having a 10-minute conversation, missing out on 10 minutes of that on a conversation that could have been had after we're finished.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, completely.
And you only get the boundaries thing when you get older.
Well,
it's not so much just the strength to actually put them up. It's also understanding where they should be.
Yeah, and the big thing on this end as well. So, and I don't know the answer to this, but I can imply. So you're a partner at a law firm at 29, very young. How was that sort of focus on self versus focus on work sort of split back then versus now? Yeah.
And now I look back and
again, implied, right? But
yeah, and look, I got to do a great, lot of things out of. I mean, if I hadn't been working so hard to achieve that goal, I probably wouldn't have got forest work. So, like, there's it's a little bit of a butterfly effect thing. Like, you can't say, oh well, if I'd got it an extra year later, because it wouldn't have turned out the way that it did, and I wouldn't have, But then you've got to know also when to, it's very easy in both partnership and other roles. Like when I was involved in surf lifesaving, it's very easy if you are dependable, people will ratchet your obligations. They never go down. They sneakily just keep increasing. And so, when I had my son, that sometimes there's an event like that happens that makes you just go, we're not doing that anymore.
Well, and let's maybe jump into the surf lifesaving bit as well. So I 2 weekends ago, I completed my bronze medallion. So, certified lifesaver. Obviously, Woo-hoo! maybe at the lower end, got my red and yellows. Very, very bright at the moment. The colours of them are. But I mean, I know that you've done a fair bit there as well. And how did maybe it'd be great if you could just talk about that, for a couple of minutes as well. But then also just how you then went with, so obviously high pressure work and then high pressure weekend, because again it's volunteer as well, and a lot of the pressure and stress that comes with that. Like, if you could talk about that and then how you manage that sort of thing. And again, I think you just said, your son came along and some decisions on that. Like, how did you prioritize and what led to some of those things?
So insofar as and I think one of the really good points out of this is going to be when you get some perspective on things and how much you yourself have lost perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on the board of Northcote Surf Club. Then I moved to Scarborough Surf Club. Then I think it was about 8 of us that got picked. It was probably at that stage, we were probably the 8 highest trained in the state.
Mm-hmm.
They flew a couple of guys over from Hawaii to teach us how to use jet skis as rescue tools.
Yeah.
And obviously having half tons zipping around on a beach, they had to have people that were of a certain age group and responsibility that they were going to let them do it. And, I as part of that, we worked very, very closely with the water police. So even for water police, for their divers to get certification, they had to actually have passed tests on the back of the ski with us.
Yeah, right.
So so we were very much, and look, we were as far as they were concerned, we were the best things in sliced bread, because and there was one day where I was doing a body recovery with the water police on Abalone Day. Swell is absolutely heaving. So they can't get their boat anywhere near where the diver has to be.
Yeah.
So the diver has to get out and swim for miles. Whereas I just come straight in grab him from the boat, come straight in on the skate. And I could sit in that wave zone, because all I'm doing is just submarining under the wave. It's not even hitting me under the, so you're just punching through it. I'm not moving. And then he pops his head up and I'm there.
Yeah.
So there were bits, we got invited to Christmas parties and all that sort of stuff, which was great. But, one time I had to do a body recovery down in south of Margaret River, and we were trying to put the person had been under a reef ledge for 3 days, sort of coming apart, trying to put it into the body bag, and he's paid for the job. And I'm thinking, I'm not getting paid for this. And this is where I want to say to you that this is where you realize, such was the drive for success of making partner, 30, all those sorts of things, right? We got back up, and as it happened that there was 2 kids from Thailand. Their parents had arrived, and their parents were like screaming, hugging us and whatnot. And I was just like, no, thank you. And I was like, why? It's not, but we get to take him home. We get to take him home, and I went to, and I was like, right, we'll probably get some calls done on the way back to town. I had files in the car,
Yeah, right.
And I went to go and get in the car, and the police counsellor came bolting after me, and she goes, "You're not going anywhere." And I was like, "No. I got to get back. Heaps to do." She's like, "No," and I said, "Look, I'll make time to see you tomorrow." She's like, "No," and I said, "Look, I got to go, really go." So anyway, I went back, drove back from Margaret River, went straight to the office, kept working, and I reckon it was about 2 hours after I'd got back. Oh boy, was I a mess. I had to call her, and she said, "Come straight," and then I don't think I for the next 3 or 4 nights, didn't sleep, nightmares, of saying something like that. And what I now look back at is a thing of, such was the desire to try and get the billable work done, keep the clients happy, do that. I was able to just walk straight out from putting a body in a bag and then get in a car and start work calls.
But did you almost take a different persona almost to do that sort of thing?
It's almost like, and I look back now,
and a character a little almost.
You almost just, it's almost the thing of, because you're not like the border police guys are trained to deal with it, right? Yeah. We're not. We were trained, and so that particular one was the first time I'd seen anything like that, and it looks worse than any horror movie you could ever imagine. Yeah. And when you, it was almost like your brain doesn't want to deal with it, right?
Oh,
so it was like, it's literally like, let's get back to something that we're comfortable with, work. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then it wasn't so much of being able to, conveniently do that, because the complete fall apart that happened afterwards is evident of the fact of what you do have to deal with it. And that's a lesson I think, all lawyers need to take, is like, if you have someone in your family that is ill or, whatever, work needs to
work and wait.
Yeah. And so, and don't think that because if somebody close to you dies or something happens, you just go back to work to try and forget about it. no. Deal with what you've got to deal with, otherwise you will pay for it.
Yeah, well, it's a good point. And like I, again, on the training I just did for bronze sort of stuff, a big part of that around, so it's Lifesaving Victoria run, really great course, a little plug for them as well. But I think a big part of that was at some stage in your journey with lifesaving, something bad could happen. And, a big part of it that was drilled into us was around the debrief. The debrief is really important, not necessarily just for you, but also for the other people that are there, because everyone will have different ways in which you deal with it, different challenges and things that they've seen previously that can bring up, and that regular check-in posted as well. So it's again, it's it's God, it sounds like a horrible, tough situation that you're in. But it's, again, I think and again, it's hopefully it made it a little bit better, but the debrief and the that sort of process and part of it was probably key.
You needed professional intervention. That was the first of 4 recoveries I did, and it was the same thing, because when we were doing that work, we were actually part of the water police. So I fell within that. So that's why I was getting counselling from them and whatnot.
Yeah.
But if it is a thing of, if you're not right, get help. It doesn't matter, whatever it is, because the convenient thing about our profession is that it's all consuming, in so many ways that it's almost easy to try and take that, I'm going to forget about it. But it's there somewhere.
You forget about it for a while until
it's there somewhere, and it's going to come and get you. So, the thing is that if you do have something big like that happens, people can throw themselves back into work and think that they're fine. But unfortunately, I think at some point, if the circumstances are that they're not fine, law does a really good job of covering up for a while, because you're so immersed in it and working so hard. So
yeah. And James, we're probably running close up on time, but I do just want to, flip it slightly and just see, any last thoughts or comments and things that you want. You don't have to, by the way, but you just wanted to brief with everyone.
Oh, look, it's. I think now in the, profession has changed a bit since, sort of, I came through, but, there's still very much one of the things I miss at being at bar, which I get with some of my good friends that approach me, is the team thing, and I enjoy just mucking in and doing it as a team. It's not like, I don't like to do the ivory tower thing, but there's a lot that you can get out of law as a profession, but it can also swallow you pretty quickly, and retention rates of people haven't been that great, and they're falling. And I don't necessarily know that enough people ask the right questions about whether people are actually enjoying themselves. What can we change to make that happen? And also, and that's not in an airy-fairy way. It's actually like, do you enjoy doing the strategy work, or do you enjoy just doing court documents? Some people hate going to court. Some people love going to court. And it can be something as simple as that. It doesn't need to be like, do you want to do a yoga and mindfulness course? I'm not talking about that stuff. It's like, which aspects of litigation do you like, do you not like? And if you muck in as a proper team, you can still get the job done.
Yeah.
But in the lead up to this, I was, a couple of trips down memory lane, just was like, whoa, it's been an interesting ride, to say the least.
And look, for today, I've thought it was a great discussion. So a really big thank you for and sharing your journey today. I think it's really interesting sort of discussions on really getting perspective, sort of playing to your strengths, and also looking after yourself, which is really key. A reminder to the listeners to please check out the previous People in Legal episodes, also the ones that are still coming in the pipeline. These can be found at the People in Legal LinkedIn page, as well as YouTube for full video, or on Spotify for podcasts. My name is Andrew Hay, on behalf of People in Legal. That's a wrap today, and lastly, big thank you to James. Thank you
so much, Matt.